Well, let's see. 30 years in the business means I'm somewhere between virginity and death, and I can still learn new tricks, all right? And the reason I'm here is because I'm really shameless. I want to learn every trick you have in engagement, every strategy, because I have a conversation with the world about a disease that we have to stop that's an epidemic. Now, take a look at the slide. It says, nothing about us without us. Again, I was shameless. I borrowed that actually from the Parkinson's Network. They are very effective as advocates, and we learn from each other, which is very important. Why not have a show of hands of those advocates who are in the room for important diseases? Raise your hands if you're here. We're all here to learn and share our experiences. I'd like to show you what's going on. And take a look at those words. It's called AMP. Right now, with the dollars, with the technology in the healthcare space, it can't be business as usual. So we're looking to pool energies in both the public and private sector, share data in a competitive space. That is very difficult. That's a whole transformational mindset, but it is happening through the NIH. Lilly is at the forefront, so kudos to Lilly for stepping out in that space. But that's the future. Medical partnerships, and we're doing it globally. We are trying to break down silos so we can learn in translational science. And I will give you a few examples later. How many of you participated in the Ice Bucket Challenge? Raise your hands. Oh, I forgot, this is Washington, right? Well, while it's being analyzed as a case study for the Business Review, no one quibbled with the cash we raised, right? From that kind of antic. Now, what about it? Talks about the energy of advocates. It was harmless. It was organic. It came from a young man who had been struck with ALS in his youth. His buddies got around, and then it went viral. And it had fun to it. It had fun against a disease that is so cruel that no one would want it for a loved one. Now, did everybody learn about everything about ALS that they should? Probably not. Did they feel good about raising money for a disease? I bet they did. And was it fun? Yes. So in that, there's a very important dynamic that we should think about when we raise money. And also think about it. It's a way for us to flip the pain. Disease advocates are hot-wired with pain. That's the space we live in. So anything we can do to get energy and change the dynamic is very important. Let me give you a good example. In 2009, there was a study that said that, oh, the world knows celebrities, but nobody can name a scientist. Now, that really pissed me off because we were at a time where we were losing the next generation to science. We were no longer competitive as a nation. And what I understood was we get the big, showy passion of celebrities, but we don't understand the quiet, focused passion of a scientist. Anyone who spends 20 years on a monoclonal antibody that might save your life, to me is someone of passion. And they deserve our respect. So I thought, well, what do we do? So I thought, well, let's flip the conversation. Let's turn our researchers into rock stars. And that's what we did. We also thought we had to get these women to lighten up a bit. And by the way, it was very hard getting women because they wanted to be taken seriously in that space. So we said to guys, loosen up. So we GQ'd the guys. And we went to the stars. And we said, this was the proposition. You don't have to own the pain of the disease. Stand next to the hope. And then what I learned is it's the same side of the brain that many of the scientists are also musicians. One does patterns in biology, the other does rhythms. So we had a rock concert on Capitol Hill. But this was the spirit of something that was negative, and that's the idea. You have to sort of flip the perception and open people up to a new way of thinking.
The people who are in research are really the rock stars. I will never live this down. We thought it was pretty funny to have neurologists acting out with rock stars. That's not what we do.
What I see in this campaign is an opportunity for the general public to get a sense that science is exciting.
These guys are the rock stars of their fields, and they don't get the support they need.
Hopefully this isn't the last time we celebrate scientists and doctors in a way that puts them in the light of a rock star.
The goal, obviously, is to put scientists right back in the heart of our public culture where they belong.
So a quick sample of a sort of crazy idea that resonated, went viral. We were invited to Capitol Hill because we were not siloed as diseases. We were embracing across all diseases. So we were invited up to the Capitol Hill, and we dumped it right in the center because those of us in Washington know if you have it on the Senate side, the House side won't come. So we put it right in the middle and threw a rock star concert, and we fed you, so you had to come. We knew you couldn't resist that. Now, I am first and foremost an Alzheimer's advocate at a time when every 68 seconds someone else falls victim. But did we really need one more book on Alzheimer's? I Googled and there are about 7,000 books. This disease has been around for a very long time. And I was very resistant to writing a book because I had interviewed so many people over my career as a journalist with nothing to say. I thought, I refuse to add to one more book on a shelf. But what I realized, when a disease, there's no cure for a disease, it goes soft around the edges because the literature has to help people live in that space just to get through it. So you celebrate a loved one and what they were, but nobody really talks about the cruelty of the disease. So as a journalist, I tried to step back, and the hardest part about writing this book was I had survived as a caregiver by forgetting. I was moving from crisis to crisis. My husband was 58 years old, a wonderful scientist who got early onset Alzheimer's. So I saw the worst of the disease, and 20 years later, I am still a caregiver. I'm still a caregiver, and now my mother is included. No disease-modifying drugs in that time, nothing at a time when this is becoming an epidemic. So I wrote the book. Sound, please. I call myself a POA. I'm a prisoner of Alzheimer's. I'm an extension of his disease. I feel compelled to speak out for both victims because they have no voice and for caregivers who are worn out. This will be our epidemic. This is the dark side of longevity. I just saw it young. So it's like being witness to the future. I'm afraid for all of us. So my wish for Harvey is that I just don't wear out or give up, or there's an episode where I can't manage it somehow. To me, it's time for a generation to say, unacceptable. This is not the way we want to end our lives. So having written the book made me reflect. And what I realized was that 20 years later, nothing had changed. I was 48 years old when I left my career in my prime to take care of my husband and deal with an emergency. And I look back and nothing had changed for the next generation of young women we had all fought hard to be in the workplace. No new disease-modifying drugs, no better care options. And we were being forced out of the workplace. And that got me upset. So in the next 20 minutes, I'm out to make you all advocates about a disease because I know that all of you respect your intellect and you're defined by who you are, and that this disease has to become unacceptable for all of us. And this is for the first time, if you look at the slides, more people now cite Alzheimer's as the scariest health condition of later life than cancer, stroke, heart disease, diabetes, and arthritis combined. And that's from a Merrill Lynch age wave poll. This is the first time in history where we are already becoming a burden to our children. And take a look at that. It's not just those of us who are 55 or older. It's our kids. It's our kids because they're watching, and many of you, I'm not asking you to raise your hand, but many of you have probably seen your mother or your dad take care of your grandparents and seen the issues that are just coming our way and the costs of the care. If you've had a concussion, way more than you should, have a metabolic disorder or postmenopausal, your risk for Alzheimer's increases about 50%. Now, it's an insidious disease that creeps up on you. So if any of you are in your 40s, that's when it begins to start and slowly invade the mind. So I'm going to take you on a quick journey that was done by David Shank. He's an award-winning producer who wrote The Forgetting. And this is a journey on how a disease entraps people and the loved ones around them.
Alzheimer's is a slow, fatal disease of the brain affecting 1 in 10 people over the age of 65. No one is immune. The disease comes on gradually as 2 abnormal protein fragments called plaques and tangles accumulate in the brain and kill brain cells. They start here in the hippocampus, the part of the brain where memories are first formed. Over many years' time, the plaques and tangles slowly destroy the hippocampus, and it becomes harder and harder to form new memories. Simple recollections from a few hours or days ago that the rest of us might take for granted are just not there. After that, more plaques and tangles spread into different regions of the brain, killing cells and compromising function wherever they go. This spreading around is what causes the different stages of Alzheimer's. From the hippocampus, the disease spreads here to the region of the brain where language is processed. When that happens, it gets tougher and tougher to find the right word. Next, the disease creeps toward the front of the brain, where logical thought takes place. Very gradually, a person begins to lose the ability to solve problems, grasp concepts, and make plans. Next, the plaques and tangles invade the part of the brain where emotions are regulated. When this happens, the patient gradually loses control over moods and feelings. After that, the disease moves to where the brain makes sense of things it sees, hears, and smells. In this stage, Alzheimer's wreaks havoc on a person's senses and can spark hallucinations. Eventually, the plaques and tangles erase a person's oldest and most precious memories, which are stored here in the back of the brain. Near the end, the disease compromises a person's balance and coordination. And in the very last stage, it destroys the part of the brain that regulates breathing and the heart. The progression from mild forgetting to death is slow and steady, and takes place over an average of 8 to 10 years. It is relentless and, for now, incurable.
For now, incurable. So let me ask you, this is a very sophisticated group. How many of you are into quantifying your own health? Personalized medicine. We all believe in targeted gene therapy for cancers. How many have personally considered genetic testing for yourselves? Raise your hands. If heart disease ran in your family, would you consent to a genetic screen? Raise your hands. If Alzheimer's ran in your family, would you consent to a genetic screen? Raise your hands. Well, you're unusual for an audience. Most are concerned with that type of information.